Chelsea 0, Manchester United 1. Now, let us take a look at the tactical tweaks that happened as this game went on. And apologies to Manchester United fans if it seemed as if I criticized Manchester United a lot in this game. It's not my fault. The stats and the momentum graph would show you that Chelsea appeared to be in control of the game, at least for a large part of the game. But that notwithstanding, the most important statistic in football is the number of goals you scored. And on that, United won the game. But let me point out a few things. Remember, I've always criticized Manchester United and Carrick that there's a problem with United's pressing that teams are playing through them. In the last 2 or 3 videos, I've mentioned it. In this game, Carrick tried to change the way United press. In fact, during Chelsea's build-up, United now opted to go into this 4-2-4 press, almost the way Manchester City does it, but a little bit different. The design is to limit Chelsea from being able to get the ball out of their own half or out of the back. Manchester City does it effectively, but United's execution of it was quite poor. And I think this is what gave Chelsea a bit of control in the game for most parts. What would usually happen here was that you had this front four of Cunha, Sesko, Fernandes, and Mbeumo locking onto sometimes this Chelsea four in build-up. Now, what happens behind the scene is that Casemiro locks onto Enzo Fernandez, and then Menu locked onto Palmer for most of the game. And you had Caicedo as a free man behind the line. But it doesn't matter. The first thing you would notice here is that behind the line, Chelsea has a 3 versus 2 advantage there already. So it's Fernandes, Caicedo, Palmer against just Casemiro and Menu. That ordinarily wouldn't be a problem as long as Sesko or Fernandes are able to keep these 2 players in their cover shadow to prevent the ball from actually getting to either of them. It worked well in theory, but what Chelsea did for most part that I think created a problem for Manchester United was being able to just tuck Cucurella into this place, or being able to drop Neto into this position as well. One way Chelsea got out of this press was just bringing Cucurella into the middle here. And once that happens, Mbeumo now has a choice, because Mbeumo usually, if Cucurella was standing here, Mbeumo could cover him. But once Cucurella moved in behind him, he now has a choice. He can either follow Cucurella or he can stay on Hato. Whichever one he does, Casemiro also has a choice. He could stay on Fernandes or he could go with Cucurella. He did neither of that. And what ended up happening was that whenever Chelsea were able to find a long ball towards Neto and Cucurella could step up, Neto could always head the ball down for Cucurella, and then Chelsea could be on the attack, because you will have Casemiro trying to split himself between Fernandes and Cucurella, which wasn't happening. So once the ball went over him and Neto could knock it down, then Chelsea were on the attack. Another thing that happened again that got Chelsea out of this press was Fernandes dropping into this defensive line to basically make up a back four. And it meant that they could then match that United press 4 versus 4. And it then made this 3 versus 2 here even more pronounced, because Casemiro now again has a choice. He could either go with Cucurella or he could go with Caicedo. And what ended up happening again was that Cucurella could then push himself very wide, and then Neto comes in the middle. It made Casemiro's job more difficult because he doesn't know whether to stay with Cucurella or whether to stay with Neto. He was doubled up on. Whichever choice he made, there was only somebody free in a lot of space for Chelsea to receive the ball and then turn and be on the attack. Let's actually see this in game. It will make more sense that way. Now, this is Chelsea's build-up, and then United gets into that 4-2-4 press again. But one thing you keep an eye on here is that Mbeumo is on Enzo Fernandez at this point. Now, it's Caicedo on this occasion who drops in to make up that back four. Now, what happens, though, is that because there is a back four for Chelsea now, Mbeumo takes his attention away from Enzo Fernandez and goes up to keep an eye on Hato. You're not going to see Casemiro on the screen here, because again, Cucurella has gone out wide. He's somewhere, he's out of your screen now, you can't see him. So because of that, Casemiro has gone out to meet him. And then what that means is that Enzo Fernandez is free behind the line in a lot of space to receive the ball and turn. This is Casemiro just arriving now. He's arriving because he was with Cucurella here somewhere. And then Chelsea were able to, again, get into a very decent position. This was not a penalty, by the way. Just forget about it. Look at another example. This is the same situation with that 4-2-4 press again. Now, on this occasion now, look at Casemiro. He now decides to push himself up on Enzo Fernandez behind the line. But watch what happens. Now, because Casemiro is a bit drawn out, now he's drawn to Enzo Fernandez. Remember, Cucurella is far ahead. He's gone up, he's gone wide. And then once Sanchez plays a long ball towards Kukureya could easily touch the ball, wins the first ball, touches it, brings it down for Pedro Neto, and then Pedro Neto could receive the ball in a lot of space and then drive Chelsea forward. On that occasion, Chelsea got themselves into a good position again. We'll talk about Chelsea's attack in a little bit. And then look at one final example on that. Again, this is that 4-2-4 structure from Manchester United again. But Enzo Fernandez drops behind the line now to receive the ball from deep and then just takes Bruno Fernandez's attention for a second. But now, watch what happens. If I just take it back a little bit, even before this happens, look at Casemiro here. Once he is stepping, he is worried about leaving Pedro Neto here. That's why he's pointing to Pedro Neto, that somebody should take care of Pedro Neto. But now, what happens is, once Enzo Fernandez now leaves that defensive line, comes behind the line again, there's nobody picking him up because Fernandez here doesn't want to leave Pedro Neto and jump forward. What then happens is that Enzo Fernandez is able to receive the ball in reasonable amount of space and then lay a pass on. Again, Chelsea got themselves in a very decent position here that, of course, our brother over there, we'll talk about him in a short time. That was United off the ball and then Chelsea on the ball. One thing I want to point out before you say that Manchester City does the same thing, the difference between this 4-2-4 and Manchester United's 4-2-4 is this. If this were Manchester City are willing to let one of these two center backs push up into midfield to mark whoever the opponent has here. And then they are willing to allow Kusanov or Maguire 1v1 with the defender, with the opponent's striker. Carey did not want that. He opted to keep both Kevin and Mazraoui on the lap. I think that is what created that overload in the midfield. But that notwithstanding, Chelsea, on the other hand, I think the goal they conceded, I'm not going to blame anybody for that goal. Chelsea were down to 10 men. I think when Fofana left the pitch, that's when they conceded that goal. It's an unfortunate goal to concede. I'm going to say it's an unfortunate goal to concede. They were down to 10 men. United had a numerical advantage and they made it count. It happened. Move on. I think after that, though, the game became harder for Chelsea because United, in the second half, could settle into a proper defensive shape. They abandoned the 4-2-4 press. They went into a low block, sometimes even getting up to 5 at the back. Chelsea tries to manipulate that low block a little bit. They would have succeeded. I think there were a few occasions where they hit the bar. But this is what Chelsea were trying to do specifically to try to manipulate that United. So in that second half, what Chelsea tried to do mostly was to stretch that United's low block. You had the situation a lot of time when Kukureya was basically occupying that space between Dalot and Mazraoui, trying to keep them pinned there with Delap and Palmer. Everybody moves into the box. Now, what Chelsea tried to do was to isolate Shaw and Gusto out wide here, or Shaw and Neto out wide. And what would usually happen was you had Cunha coming to back him up. Once that happens, Neto or Gusto, one of them is able to receive the ball in this zone for free. And then, because you had 3, 4, or 5 Chelsea players attacking the box, United really often did not have anybody coming out to cover Neto, and they focused on protecting their own box in that low block. And what happened was Neto usually had time to put dangerous balls into the box. And I think Chelsea hit the woodwork twice in this game just by doing that. Let me show you 2 examples. Again, this is one of them. Notice the position of Pedro Neto as well. And now, as soon as this ball goes wide to Malo Gusto, of course, Luke Shaw and Cunha have gone out to mark him. And if you look at the Manchester United box, in just a minute, you notice that you have 4 Chelsea players attacking the box already. And what that means now is that so hard time to actually carefully pick his head up, pick a pass into the box. This one hit the woodwork on this occasion, but look at this second one. Again, I want you to look at the position of Malo Gusto here and look at 3 Chelsea players in the box and then 3 in front again. They have United occupied in front of their own 18-yard box, such that when this ball goes out wide, Cunha does not want to leave Neto 1v1 with Shaw. So he goes with Luke Shaw to double up on Neto, which means that Gusto could then receive the ball in front, almost in a similar position again, where he can whip a cross in. And then, of course, you have 5 Chelsea players attacking the box. It wasn't an overload, but this ball fell to Kopama, and again, Chelsea had a good chance. In all, look, it was a deserved game for Manchester United. They defended well, but I think that most of the problem was from Chelsea, especially Chelsea's left-hand side, where you had Garnacho. Garnacho could not get past. If the combination of Neto and Gusto on the right-hand side, Chelsea had the same combination of Garnacho and Kukureya or Garnacho and Hato on the other side, it would have been a much better game for Chelsea. But Garnacho, I mean, I think I would put most of Chelsea's bad luck to Garnacho. But anyway, that's how football is sometimes. You play and you don't win. That's what happened today. Anyway, tactical analysis, that's what we do on this channel. If you enjoy content like this, hit the like button, hit the follow button, hit the subscribe button. See you on the next one.